What this is, you're my surprise victim today for the next installment of the Legends of the Steel Pipe Business. And I know that what we like to do is talk about, your history of being in the pipe business. And this one, like you said to me a few minutes ago, it's going to be easy because you've been with one pipe company the whole time. So I want to hear how you got started with Britex. I want to know the history of Britex before you came on board, what year that was, that kind of deal.
All right, here's how it all started, okay? Yeah. So my previous career was playing baseball, which is obvious behind me. Most people do know, okay? So I played baseball for 13 years, and then as it seemed like my career was coming to an end, I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what to do. I'm still under contract to play baseball with the Houston Astros, but I'd had such a rough previous year, playing for 3 different organizations, played in Venezuela, been away from the family. Finally got moved into a home and unpacked our wedding gifts after about 10 years. And
what year was this?
This is in 1981. And so my wife, Paula, says, tell you what, why don't you go interview for a job? As far as you know, you can't even get a job. Well, that was kind of this challenge she laid down for me. And I thought, well, don't challenge me. So I go out and I go to these different interviews, and each interview I was actually offered a job, like on the spot, okay, except one. And so I go up on a Friday evening and interview with this company called Sunbelt. And I interview with them, but they don't offer a job. And that kind of bothered me. So driving home, I'm sitting there all night. I said, guys, I'm like, it's like you missed a good pitch, you just didn't get it. And I said, I'm gonna do something about this. And so Saturday morning I get up, I thought, well, I'll just give it a try. I'll call them. I don't know if they work Saturday or not. So I call and they do answer the phone. I said, this is Balor Moore. I interviewed yesterday. Yes, we remember. I said, well, I would like to inform you that I would like to accept this job. And they go, well, that's funny because we didn't offer it, but we sure like your attitude. And you're aggressive. Can you come back in Monday morning? I said, sure. So I came in Monday morning, was offered the job. So I worked there about 9 months before they had a complete layoff. And I did handle one.
This was Sunbelt.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Were they a pipe company?
They were a pipe company. I don't know. It's just Sunbelt. I can't remember if it's trading pipe, sure, international tubular, whatever. It's 9 months. They're a pipe company. But I was still under contract with the Astros at the time. And I remember it was like right before spring training, the Astros called and they said, gee, we finally found you. I said, yeah, what? They said, well, you're supposed to be in spring training next week. What are you going to do? I said, I've retired. And that was really how I retired from baseball, believe it or not, on that one phone call instead of going to spring training. I thought, well, okay, I've established, got a home, kids are in school, signed them up for Little League, and I was domesticated again. So I go to work for this company, Sunbelt, and I remember I'm sitting there the very first day.
Can I ask how old you were?
Yeah, I think I was 30, 31, somewhere in that range right there, probably 30 years old, which 30 is not old in baseball now. 30 was on the backside of anybody's career in my era when I played. They don't, well, without getting into the side stories about baseball then and baseball now, which I could spend the rest of the day talking to you about, but it was at that point I was on the backside of my career. I all of a sudden had an opportunity to lead a real life, and so that's kind of the decision made at that very moment. And so I only worked there for 9 months before they laid everybody off, but I'd handled this account called Britex and a guy named Cyril Lavender who had this thick English accent. And I guess I had his account, or I talked to him. So he finds out like within a day or two that I wasn't there anymore, and he called and made contact with me. And his offer was, he says, would you come and visit with me? I'm a 65-year-old man. I have no kids, nobody to leave this to. If you would come over and work with me, perhaps we would work out a deal where you could buy the company from me. I said, okay. And that's how I came to Britex. And eventually we worked out a deal where Cyril retired and I became owner of Britex. A funny story about my background as far as the pipe, the first day I'm sitting behind this desk and the secretary walks in. Her name, I remember, was Susie Martinez, and she says, "Mr. Moore, how would you like to set up your office?" And I said, "Susie, I've never been indoors for 8 hours in a row. I have no idea, but let's start with A to Z, and if you can show me how to turn this ad machine on, I think that'd be a good start." She says, "Well, A to Z is good, but it's called a calculator, and here's the switch." So that was my beginnings in the pipe company, right, in the pipe industry right there. And I basically had no training. And
so this Mr. Cyril
Lavender,
he, you must have hit it off with him when you were at Sunbelt. For him, or made an impression on him. He thought he, obviously had seen something in your potential as a young person.
Yeah, maybe so. You don't ever know exactly, your first impressions, or if you have patience with someone, or sometimes you may pay someone a compliment and it lasts, or you can be ugly to someone and it doesn't. It has the opposite effect. But either way, Cyril made this offer to me, and it worked out great. But I remember when I said, well, he says, "Now what kind of compensation package would you be interested in?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, my background is paid on production. In baseball, you produce or, you're gone. And there's always someone there to take your place. And so there's a lot of self-discipline that's needed. And I think I have those qualities just built into me from my past experience. So I'll just work on a commission. I'll take 20% of the profit, and that should do it." He goes, "Well, what kind of salary do you want?" I said, "I don't need a salary." He goes, "You're kidding. I've never heard of this." I said, "Well, if I don't sell for you, you can get rid of me. If I do, then this will work out fine." And so that's how we started. And, it's always been that way. I think that I'm motivated to produce. And if you don't, it's like getting sent to the minor leagues. In baseball, you better start producing, and all of a sudden these survival instincts kick in for you, and you do whatever it takes. And that's probably, I would say my success, however measured right now, is just because I have those qualities, being competitive, having discipline, having a work ethic, and these survival instincts that know that somebody's always there to take your place if you don't. And so that's basically it. I don't ever pretend to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, you got to outwork them.
That, well said. Yeah.
So now that was about 1981.
Yeah.
And was that in this location, this current location? Where was that at?
Cyril just had a rented office.
No pipe yard?
No. We didn't have anything really, truth be known. His brother had some inventory that was located in this yard on a storage basis that we were allowed to sell out of. But he had no inventory of his own. When I was trying to seek advice about purchasing the company, purchasing Britex, everybody says, "You need to look at the financials." And well, there's two things. First of all, I didn't know how to read a financial. And the other thing is they didn't have one. So, we were kind of even on that one right there. Now I'll risk this. I mean, what are you risking, right? Because I always thought that, if this doesn't work out, I can go back to baseball. I retired from baseball healthy. Yeah. And actually, if you look back, 2 years after I retired, the Astros had called and they asked me to come out to the Dome and throw batting practice during a homestand. And I said, "Sure, I'll do that." And so I went out and I was throwing batting practice. And after a 2-year rest, I come back, my talent resurfaced. And I had actually better stuff then than the year I retired and struggled. And when I finished the last session, they came up to my agents and the general manager of the Astros and offered me another contract. Now that decision was even harder than the first time because it was so tempting, and plus, all of a sudden I'm in uniform again, I'm back on the baseball field, and all the hunger comes back and the competitiveness. I made my decision, I'm retired. That was much harder at that point.
Oh, I can only imagine.
But it was permanent. I was never tempted again.
Right. So you put that one behind you.
Baseball was over.
So it was just you and Searle?
Yeah, at the time, it
Just
was.
You two guys.
And his wife, Ruby.
All right.
And that's where you come with the name Britex. Searle being from London, and Ruby, who was actually from Alvin, Texas. So you had Britex.
Gotcha. Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
How everybody has a unique story on their company.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you guys move here and start growing? I remember, when I first met you, gosh, 35 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you and Scott Irwin
Yeah.
were in this building. And so when did that transformation take place?
Probably a couple of years later, because Cyril's brother owned a company called Weltex, which is the largest distributor of steel in Europe, one of the largest. And that's how he ended up with some of the, some material that was stored down here. And a guy named Hank Persons owned or had leased this yard that we're on right now with a company called Kerbar. Well, he went under, and the owner of the property had the sheriff come out and lock the gate, so we couldn't even get in. We couldn't ship any material, anything. I found out basically who the owner of the property was, renewed the lease, paid the back rent on it, and then a few years later agreed to actually purchase the property. So I'd say probably 3 years after I went to work, I went to work for Britex and purchased it, and then that's where we moved down here. And so we've been here ever since.
And Searle,
that was probably 1983 that we've been here on this location.
And Searle came with you to this location?
Actually, no, at that point he was phasing out. He didn't really, we'd worked out the agreement and Searle retired. Now, part of that story also is probably within the second year, I recommended that we could bring over a very good friend of mine, Scott Irwin. And Scott Irwin came over. And so basically from the infancy that Scott and I basically built this company up together. And we complemented each other tremendously. And, my personality and his personality, and we teamed up, and we were a very good team, and we built the company. And then later on, Scott wanted to be his own quarterback. That's kind of what he told me, which is understandable. He was programmed that way. And so we parted ways, and Scott formed his own company called Apex Pipe Company, and we're still friends. I consider him one of my very best friends ever. And he's done really well with it, I think. So, and wish him the best, but that's how that happened. So now that's it's just me.
Sure. And how did you and Scott Irwin meet? You say you were friends.
Well, we both worked at Sunbelt together for that brief period, and when they laid everybody off and eventually went under, he and I were laid off together.
Yeah.
I went home and I told Paul, I said, gee, let's laid off Scott today. He goes, oh no, that's terrible. I said, yeah, and Charlie's gone too. She goes, oh, that's terrible. I said, yeah, and the worst part is I'm out. So they got rid of all three salesmen, but they kept their accountant, their lawyer, and their vice president, and all these people that didn't produce anything. And even what little I knew about business after 9 months, I left scratching my head. I thought, well, who's going to sell stuff for them? They didn't last another year, I think, and they went under.
Sure.
I think. I didn't keep up with them.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good story. And now you've got Balor Jr.
Yeah.
He's been here working with you for a long time.
15 or 16 years, yeah. And it's neat. I've got Paula, my wife, works here. Jenny's been with me since she was 18 years old. She's been here like 30 years. Mike Willis, he and I played together in Toronto with the Blue Jays for 3 years. We sat in the bullpen together. And then he moved to Houston, and he's been here for roughly 30 years. My son's 15 years. My yard foreman's been here for 35 years. My welder, my operators, I've got so many people that have been here with me for over 30 years. I mean, that's pretty proud of that too.
Absolutely. So you're not as mean and ornery as you'd make it.
I am.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I am. No, it's good. It really is. I'm very proud of the fact that these guys have been here this long. I mean, these guys hired on when they were young, and now they have grandchildren.
Right.
So I think it's good.
That's a neat story. Let me ask you this: looking back, all these years, 30 plus years, going on 40 years, Britex. Is there anything that you would change? Hindsight's 2020. Would have you done something a little differently at some point in the journey?
No. A neat thing, of course, almost all my life, all my experiences and my learning goes back to my baseball career, because in 13 years it's like a cram course on life, and I've not really run across anything or any situations that I can't draw from some baseball experience, except I had no business experience. And I still almost, when I get through a room with these people in the NASPD and some of these meetings, I'm pretty quiet because I don't have as much to offer as these business people do. And it's so interesting to listen to what they have to say, but I retired from baseball without any regrets because I never cheated the game. I showed up every day prepared and gave it everything I had, and I took care of myself. And so when you leave, you just think, my talent's gone. I can't go anymore. The heart was there, but the talent was diminished until I wasn't a major leaguer at that point. And it's easy to leave that way, or easier. The hard part was I was still healthy. So that leaves you a little second guess in there. So as far as Britex or the business right here, you look back and, I've not cheated anywhere as far as my effort or taking care of people or the way we do business, your basics, pay the bills on time, speak the truth, et cetera, like that. And I look back and I've not violated any of those values. And so would I do anything any different? I just can't pinpoint any certain thing. There's deals that didn't work out, but those things are going to happen. They'll happen again.
Sure.
But as far as the things that we've accomplished, the people that have been here, the loyalty, the values I just stated earlier, they speak for themselves.
Sure. Now, if you were to give advice to a young guy just coming into the steel pipe business, and you wanted to give him, one or two pieces of real good advice, what would you tell that young person?
Well, right now, because I'm having a little issue buying into the new generation, the millennials they talk about, and all the electronics and the way, and I think that is good, but I don't want to take away from the older way that I grew up with, okay? So I think you could bridge the two. To put it again in a baseball illustration is, I think today's athletes are much better than they were in my era, but that's not to devalue our accomplishments during that era. So do not devalue the way that our work ethic, seeing people, personal relationships, on the telephone, calling people, whereas opposed to nowadays, it seems like it's email, you're not as personable, etc. So, I would emphasize, if I were talking to a younger person, the first thing I'd want to teach is a work ethic. That's my core right there. Like I say, I'm not the smartest guy in this business, but I will not allow someone to outwork me. And that's true in baseball. You get to the highest level, the major league level, there's a lot of equal talent. So how are you going to beat this guy out? Well, I outwork him. I'll be better prepared, right? So that would tell a young person, if coming in, to say, these are qualities that you have to have. And you can learn these, okay? You can learn a work ethic if you don't have one. As an example, when I hired my son here, the first 2 years he was here, I only took 3 days off. Because I want to show him this is what we do. We show up every day and we work. And we don't take off early. We don't go get a haircut at noon, et cetera, like that, We work hard. And so you work hard. And then I would emphasize some personal relationships that I think there's really, they don't do as much nowadays. And I know every one of my customers probably know their wives and some of their kids. Problem is they're getting old like me and they're retiring. And now we have these young kids that I've got to try to take to a ball game, and they're going, I didn't go with my dad or my grandpa, right? So I don't have as much in common, fortunately, with my son Balor here. He's at that age now that he can do that because the people, the engineers, the estimators, the contractors that are now that we are our customer base, same age as he is.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, the things that you just touched on with work ethic and, you know, and just being more personal, those are great pieces of advice. I totally agree with you 100%. I would also like to talk a little bit about NASPD. Here some years back, I think I have it down here, you were the president of the NASPD in 2012, 2013.
Uh-huh.
Does it seem like 7 years ago, or does it seem like yesterday that you were president?
It doesn't seem that long ago, and I couldn't remember what years it was until you just stated. But no, I was real reluctant to accept that position because I didn't think I had much to offer, or certainly wasn't qualified compared to some of the past presidents. Like I said, you know, not sure I'm really a business person. But I did accept it, and it's a tremendous experience. I learned a lot, and so glad I did accept that position. Now, I know when I was drafted to play baseball, I held out for a week to try to get more money. And when I was contacted by Diane to be the president of NASPD, I held out for 2 months, and they didn't change the offer, so I figured, you know, either you got to accept or not. So they're tough on the negotiation part. So no, I was glad I did the presidency.
Awesome. Can you remember the first time you had heard about the NASPD or your first meeting? You know, can you remember?
Yeah,
tell
I
me
knew
about
it.
that.
The first time was whatever year it was. Joe Bergfeld was the president, and so I don't remember what year.
That was 1983, 84.
Okay, and I think the first meeting I went to was in San Diego, and I didn't know anything about attending a formal meeting like that. So I was called out of order several times on my behavior, I'm sure, but things were different back then. But I thought it's just a party, and you go meet these people that you talk to on the phone. And you know, that still carries over today. The biggest part of me going to the NASPD is seeing people that we do business with. Our friendship, mine and yours, Randy, goes back 30 plus years. Where did we first meet? NASPD.
That's exactly right. I would have never met you.
Exactly. And some of the value, you know, some people may think they go to these meetings to sell pipe or perhaps buy a pipe, and that's important, and it does, but mine is more about meeting people and having relationships, good and bad. Sometimes you meet someone that you've had a rough relationship with, and you can patch it up or improve it or get an understanding or solve the problem. So that is a great benefit also. Or if you've met someone, if you and I had a deal and we had an issue with you, you called me up and said, hey, I got a problem with this. I said, well, Randy, let me fix it for you. If I didn't know you, well, let's go up there and I'll meet you and we'll solve it, okay? Because maybe I'm not sure, but since I have a friendship, there's no need. As an example, Greg Simmel and I got off on the wrong foot with each other from the very get-go.
At NASPD meeting?
No, just doing business. Yeah, we had a deal that just did not go good, and ended up hollering on the phone and fussing at each other and such, and threatening each other. And within the next few months, there was a meeting in New Orleans, and we ended up, Greg walked up to me and says, do you think we can get off to a different start? And we went and had breakfast together and talked to him. Greg's a good friend of mine now, all because I met him at the NASPD. And we mended everything up, realized neither one of us was really right or wrong, and just escalated. But now we're very good friends. And I can name you probably 4 or 5 other instances that the friendships have grown tremendously.
That's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it is so true that our business, the industry standard is to talk on the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have customers that I've sold pipe to 30 years plus that I've never met, because they're out in the middle of Timbuktu, hard to get to, and there's really not that need. But that's what the NASPD does, is brings us together, 3 times a year, and that way we can put a face to the name and do those things. So when in those earlier years and even into now, who were some of the people that you would like to hang out with at NASPD? I know we all seem to gravitate towards certain friends.
Yeah, you do. You go to the meetings and you see some of the same people with the same people. Again, and I don't know if it's either business or friendships, because our entire customer base is contractors. If I sell a couple of pieces of pipe to another distributor in a year, that's probably a big year for me. So when I go to a meeting, I'm buying from most of these people and not selling to them, right? But most of the time you end up with people that you enjoy their company with. Right? And so you go out to dinner basically to relax and have fun, have some laughs, tell some stories. And so that's who I end up around. But as far as people, Joe Bergfeld is a great friend of mine because we laugh a lot. He gets my humor. Gerald Murfish, his humor is a lot different, but I can make him laugh, so I'm around Gerald quite a bit. Don Karchmer, great friend of mine. I learned so much from Don, and I trust him as much as anybody in this business. So I'm always talking to Don or Darren there. I can just go on and on. Bruce Happ turns into a good friend. We do no business together, but he's a friend, so I'm always there talking to him. Yourself, we do some business together, but always make sure that I come up and have conversation or something, a drink or something to eat with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what about a memorable conference, whether it be because of the location or the great golf courses, or what are the ones that stand out to you?
Well, I'd have to think about that. Kind of blend together, I don't have an answer for that one yet.
You must have missed the Coeur d'Alene meeting.
Well, let me tell you why. Okay. So
you were booked. I can't wait to hear your side of the story. You were booked.
Yeah. I was supposed to play golf with Ted Kahn, I believe, and I don't remember who else. They at least sent me the bag ticket. That says I played there, even though I really didn't. And I keep it on my golf bag. But here's a backstory on what happened on that. We had a big job going at a casino, and we were selling 42-inch pipe. Okay, and 130-foot lengths, and shipping over there direct to this casino, and it was used for the foundation for the parking garage and everything that goes into it. Very, very big job. So I'm over at Hobby Airport. I'm in line to board the plane, right? And my cell phone goes off, and it's the job site, and the guy says, Mr. Moore, he says, this is so-and-so with such company. You're supplying the pipe piles for our job. I said, yes, I am. He says, we have a problem. I said, well, what is it? He says, all your wells have been rejected. I said, oh, gosh. I said, well, I'm about to get on a plane. This is, I think, on a Thursday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday. I said, I'll be back in Sunday. Can I meet you Monday morning? He said, sure, if you want to. But let me just tell you something. This job runs out at $395,000 a day, and starting now, it's on you. I said, whoa.
That'll get your attention.
Yeah, so I'm counting up how many days of life we have left at Britex, right? Times, $395 times, and you're running through the numbers off. So I just do an about face and head straight and get in my car. And the next morning I was sitting over at his office at 5 a.m. And believe it or not, he was there. He says, well, come on in and have a cup of coffee. We talked about it, went through the whole deal, problem was solved, and I got out of it where it was wrong. There wasn't anything wrong with our welds. The inspector was out of line, let's say. So here's another point. I showed up in person, solved the problem, had nothing to do with emails, online, in person. One-on-one, I'm here. Let's fix this. So I didn't make it to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you get another chance 6 months away.
I'll be there. I'm planning on it.
You're planning.
I'm going to probably skip Chicago because I have a conflict, but in Coeur d'Alene's up next, right?
Yeah, that's right. That'll be the next one.
But I also had to rearrange my elk hunt around your Coeur d'Alene deal.
You'll be glad you did. You
Yeah,
can always find the elk out there, but Coeur d'Alene, that only comes around once every 10 years, evidently.
Yeah, somebody has some influence, I think.
I love it. That's awesome. We're getting down towards the end, and I want to ask you one of the ones that I skipped over, and I don't want to skip over it, so they can edit this, do whatever they want. But I wanted to ask you, did you have a mentor, either growing up in the pipe business or even a family member? Was there a mentor or mentors in your life going through the pipe business?
There was in baseball.
Who was that?
Don Drysdale was my mentor in baseball when I was 18, 19 years old. And he was assigned to me after he'd retired and took me under his wing. And I can give you about 2 hours worth of stories on that. But as far as the pipe business, no. I learned everything on my own. I am self-taught in every aspect of the pipe business. Like I said, the very first day, I told you A to Z and turned the ad machine on. And the owner walked up and he gave me a book that says, here, call your end users and introduce yourself. And I didn't know what a cold call was. I didn't know what that meant. And an end user I thought was like the end user. And I know it's END. So this is how bad I was, or how naive I was as far as the industry. And so I would just call and introduce someone, and myself, and then little by little, I'd ask enough questions. I'm kind of an audio type learner, so I ask 1,000 questions, and that's how I learned. And even the customers, you call this contractor and ask him what it's using for, then you ask, please tell me what that means. And so that's how I learned. On my own, I had no clue. And it's
that seemed to have worked out well for you.
Yeah, it did. When we were out here, we do value added at Britax, and so I very seldom sell just a double random piece of pipe. We take pipe and we make it into lengths, longer lengths. Just earlier this week, we shipped 135-foot lengths out of this yard. So we do that, and we do coating, and we sell pretty much to contractors. We have a small geographic footprint. We kind of stay along the Gulf Coast. That's where our market is. But I don't know anything about welding. I do now. I didn't when we started this. I didn't know how to set up rollers. I didn't know how to double joint. I knew none of this. So I just had to learn through asking questions. The first piece of equipment that we bought out here is when I got here, after we finally secured the lease, I told you earlier, I said, well, we probably need something to load this pipe with. What do you think? Yeah. So I went out and I went around the different places, and I found a forklift, a wheel loader, 950 Caterpillar, and it was $50,000. And we didn't have $50,000, but we financed it, and I got it in. I'm on my own right now. Okay, Cyril was at his other office, and he knew less about forklifts than I did. And so they delivered it down here, and I thought, well, I'll get on it and practice a little bit, which I did, and I ended up ruining a piece of 30-inch pipe. I dropped it so many times, I didn't realize that it actually would go flat if you dropped it. Okay, lesson one, don't drop your pipe, okay? All right, so when I finally said, well, I think I'm getting the hang of this, but it's time to go home, it's almost dark, and it wouldn't turn off. I didn't know how to turn the machine off. Oh, this is getting even worse, okay? Because I know you can't leave it idling forever, right? So I finally come in, I get on the phone, and I find a 800 number, a night number for Mustang, right? And I said, I know this is stupid, but I've got a piece of equipment out here and I don't have to turn it off. So they had to tell me, because I kept turning the key off, it just wouldn't die. And so there's something else I learned, okay? So I learned how to load. And so basically I could probably go out and do everything here except I couldn't pass a weld test. But I can fill in for anybody that's not here right now. Yeah. And I was very boastful about that. And so I was having dinner one night with a friend of mine, Bill Proler, and his uncle was there. And I was I said, well, I do everything. I know my company inside and out. I can fill in and I can weld and I can weed eat. I can do anything out there. He looked at me and he put his hand on my shoulder and says, Balor, I know you're proud of all that, but you're going to make your money sitting behind that desk. And I thought, oh, okay, there's a little tidbit. So I said, okay. So me and my foreman made a little pact with each other. He says, look, I'll take care of everything out there and you take care of it in here, okay? You don't try to do my job and I won't try to do yours. And now we've been together, 35 years. Yeah. With that one little basic rule. Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, okay? Right. I'll weed eat and make the place look pretty, but I don't have time to get pipe out the gate. Okay, well, just don't worry about the weeds. We'll leave that alone. So no, do I have to answer, did I have a mentor? No, I didn't. Not in this industry. I didn't. This is all self-taught on my own.
Well, you've done a great job and have built a successful company. So, good job. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we totally wrap up the interview, is there anything else that maybe you want to share that I didn't ask you? I always want to make sure that I don't cut you short, or we've always got plenty of time. I don't know, you might have a cool baseball story for all I know.
Oh, I've got a lot of baseball. Baseball stories are a little bit like jokes. If you get 3 or 4 people sitting around, you start remembering jokes, right? But you sit here and somebody else say, hey, tell me your funniest baseball story, and you go, and you come up with like nothing.
Right. Right. Well, Don Drysdale, you touched on him. Is he the man that pitched the no-hitter? Or maybe that's a different Dodger that I was thinking of.
There's been a lot of Dodgers,
He ended up in the World Series. There was that gentleman. I'm not a huge baseball fan, so I don't know the history that well, but he ended up retiring up in North Idaho, up in Hayden, Idaho, just north of Coeur d'Alene, but probably somebody else.
Well, as far as that, you just add this or not if you want to, but the way that I was introduced to Don Drysdale is a Hall of Fame Dodger, okay? And so when he retired in 1968 or 69, and everybody knew he'd been on TV because he's in Hollywood with the Dodgers. He's very recognizable, and he's this big guy. Donnie's probably over 6'6", maybe 6'6", right? And so I was in college in Florida going to spring training. So I was trying to handle both. Now you had to have a certain class load at the time to keep your draft deferment, because Vietnam was at its peak back then in 70. And so I go to class in the morning and hustle over real quick to get to spring training, which was in the morning. And I was missing out on quite a bit of that, okay? And so everybody says, man, you're unbelievable. I think you're going to make the team. I said, really? And so now I'm thinking, man, I can make the team, but I'm missing a lot of the drills and this and that. So I stopped going to class and dropped out of college to finish spring training, right? Well, it's a couple bad decisions mixed in there. First of all, I didn't make the team. And then I ended up having to go in the Army because I lost my deferment. So I got a couple of bad decisions there. But during that spring training time, I was pitched against the New York Yankees in spring training. I was pitched against Mel Stottlemyre. And I look over, I'm out there. Now, remember, I'm 19 years old at the time. I'm barely 19, right out of high school, basically. And I look over on the Yankees bench, and they're sitting there, Yogi Berra, and Mickey Mantle, and Billy Martin, and Elston High, all these guys that you just grew up with and cherished their baseball cards, right? And you're going, my gosh, I mean, you wanted to call timeout and go get their autograph, right? But I'm pitching against these guys. They weren't playing. They were retired players, but still had the Yankees, right? So I'm out there and I am pitching really well. And I've got Bazooka Joe and I'm blowing bubbles and I'm just having the time of my life and it's coming easy, right? So I pitched 7 innings, which they don't do in spring training now. Okay, but I did. And after the game, I'm sitting there and I'm getting dressed and they called me in the manager's office. And they sat me down, they said, kid, I'll tell you something. This is a man's game. We're playing for a living out here. You see Jerry right there, he's got 7 kids. He's counting on this paycheck. I'm counting on this paycheck to win games, okay? It's a man's game, so you lose the bubble gum right now. Okay. And he looks over, and Don Drysdale was standing in the corner. He's our pitching coach. He says, Donnie, I want you to take this kid and make him into a big leaguer. He says, I can do that. And so I was assigned, or Don Drysdale was assigned to me for the rest of spring training. And so now we're just having conversation and baseball stories, but we get back on the bus to the hotel in West Palm Beach. He says, all right, kid, he says, you meet me in the lobby at 6. We're going out. I said, okay. And he says, put a tie on. This is already starting off bad because I didn't have a tie, right? So I manage one of the players loan me a tie and I get dressed up and I meet him in the lobby and we go out that night, right? And of course, we go to a nice restaurant in Palm Beach, and he says, all right, and he's trying to look at the menu. And I'm a kid from a very small town, Deer Park, right? Never been away from home. And
is that Texas, Deer Park?
Yeah, it's right over to the east of us here. And I go to order, and I said, well, I think I'll have me a chicken fried steak and a Dr. Pepper. You know, that's what we eat here, right? Or a hamburger. And he says, no, you're going to have a steak and you're going to have a scotch and water. So I was introduced to that life, right? And so I never forget. So we go out and he's recognizable. So he goes everywhere and people buying him drinks and I'm there. He's got his arm around me and this is the beginning, you know, of your years of drinking and alcoholing and partying and such. And so that's the part that maybe I shouldn't have learned from him, but I learned it well. Okay, and
from the best.
So I never forget the next morning, the phone rings, and it's him in the hotel room. He says, "Hey, kid." I said, "Hey, Donnie." He says, "Where'd I park last night?" I said, "Well, I'm looking out the window, and you're parked down between the 2 palm trees and on the esplanade." He goes, "You're doing good." And so and I'm sitting in my locker with the first hangover I ever had, right? My head's throbbing, and I'm sitting there going, I don't think I can be a big leaguer. This hurts too bad to be a big leaguer. But anyway, so I'm with Don Drysdale, and he has this reputation during his playing careers of being one of the meanest players to play, and you never wanted to hit against. And his rule was, you knock down one of my hitters, 2 of yours are going down. And he had this little black book, and he kept track of who he owed a knockdown to, right? But he retires, and he's still got a few names in this book, right? And so since he was my mentor, and I'm assigned to him and vice versa, so every time I go out and pitch, he would be like in the dugout or behind home plate or somebody watching me. And somebody come to bat, like an older person, and he'd light up and you'd see him, he'd get this book out and he'd give me this sign like this. That was my signal to brush him back, right? And I'd do so. Well, it didn't take long for me to get the reputation in spring training, even at a young age, to be Drysdale's hatchet kid, his hatchet man, right? And it got so bad, I was pitching against Atlanta one time. I don't remember the hitter, but Drysdale's back there and he looks and he sees this name. I get this sign, right? He's sat behind home plate this time, watching my pitches, right? So I knock the guy down, and the hitter goes down. He gets up, and he's staring at me. He throws the bat down. He whirls around. He runs back to the backstops and starts jawing with Drysdale. And I'm the one that threw the pitch, right? So anyway, he knew what was going on, right? And so I had to complete his black book for him since he wasn't a player anymore. But that's how my relationship with Drysdale started.
How long did your relationship with him last?
Probably maybe 2 seasons.
Yeah.
The downside of that is, and Paula told me this when we were at a ballpark in El Paso at a minor league game one time when Drysdale passed away. He was found dead in his room in Montreal. And it really saddened me. I was sitting there, it was announced over the loudspeaker. One of our families passed away in the baseball at Don Drysdale.
That's how you heard? You
Yeah,
were in
and
the bullpen?
Well, I was in the stands. I'd retired at the time, and I sat there and go, gosh, and it really hurt. It touched me for obvious reasons. And my wife, Paula, sat next to me, and I said, God, it hurts. She says, I want to say something that I've been wanting to say for a long time. I said, well, he says, not everything you learned from Donnie was good. And I started thinking back, and I thought, yeah, I was introduced to a lot of stuff. Nothing illegal, don't get me wrong there. Drugs never been a part, but the drinking and the going out, knocking hitters down, those kind of things, I developed a reputation in baseball. And a lot of that I was not Don Drysdale. I tried to be, but I wasn't. There's only one Don Drysdale, And so I've kind of learned from that a little bit that maybe all wasn't good that he taught me off the field, okay? You've known my past. We've known and we've talked about like drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And I'm 16 years since I had my last beer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud of that.
Because you weren't that good at it.
It's pretty good. There's a difference between a pro and an amateur, I want you to know, even in drinking, okay? And I was a pro. So, but yeah, I've not been tempted by it, and it's just worked out. It's been good. But I was introduced to it that first night, and you're drinking scotch and water. That's some nasty stuff if you've never drank it before. I thought, man, how could anybody like this? Oh, you learn. You learn.
Yeah, you learn.
Yeah.
You learn. Well, I tell you, all of your friends, people in the industry, I know Paula, we sure love having you sober.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. It took me like 2 years to get my personality back, because when you stop, drinking was it's just a part. And I would never consider myself an alcoholic. Like, I talk to Jay Solonsky regularly as a support, right? And he goes about it differently. He goes to meetings. I think Jay's addicted to meetings. And but I've never been to one. But it's just worked out for me.
I think your meeting is sitting right out there.
Yeah,
Paula,
it's all right here.
Paula and your work here.
And it's part of my testimony too. I have 2 things that the foundation of my testimony as far as my faith, my language, and not drinking, that I give credit to my faith and to Jesus that's taken that from me and given me the strength not to go back to it or to that part of my life either. And so it's been good. I was probably just one tragedy away in drinking of turning my whole life upside down. If you think about it, halftime at Super Bowl, you run up to get another 6-pack of beer and you get in an accident, or you take out a family in an intersection, and then you live through it, and you got to live with that the rest. Well, that could still happen, but I won't be drunk if it does.
Right. Yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
Well, Balor, I can't tell you how much I kind of surprised you here today.
Worked out.
And it worked out, and I appreciate
Unrehearsed. Yeah, I can ad-lib and we can go on, and because you start to blend baseball, and that was just one story. I could go through dozens. In all those years, you got some good stories. And I think I've told a couple of stories actually at the meetings.
Sure.
The first meeting when I was introduced as president, it was here at Houston on our giant. We had over 500 people sitting there. I'm sitting at the head table, and Bill Buckland, I was taking his place. Gerald was there, the mayor of Houston, and several other people. And they're talking and doing the Hall of Fame, and Bill Buckland gets up there, and Gerald turns to me and says, "What are you going to say?" And I went, "Well, I asked Susanna." She says, "I didn't say anything." He goes, "Oh yeah, you need to get up there." Susanna says, "Yeah, you need to get up there." And I went, "Uh-oh." All of a sudden I couldn't talk. Unprepared, right? I said, what am I going to do? Well, what do? You fall back on a baseball story, right? So I got up there, and without repeating the story here, or unless you want me to, but I got up and told a baseball story and related it a little bit to the NASPD. So I bailed out on that one, but well, I thought, man, I can usually handle my nerves, I'm used to it.
Sure.
In a way.
Yeah.
I was nervous then. I don't know what I was going to say. And people say, you're not ever at a loss for words, but yeah, I sure was then. I thought, man, I had like probably 3 or 4 minutes to think of something.
Yeah, I understand. I'm living that right now.
I talked to you about that in San Diego because you handled yourself really well. You're calm up there. It was your presentation, but I know people have trouble speaking in front of them. They don't realize it.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. And, like usually when I was in your, as a president to address the General Assembly out there, you warm up with a baseball story or something, anything you can think of, and I have a lot of ammunition there, kind of relax them and to get their attention. If you can tell a story, most of the time you will get people's attention because they want to hear the story.
Right.
Or Jesus taught in parables, right, with stories. And so that's what I tried to do, is to tell a baseball story or anything you can think of, and then you have everybody's attention. Then you can go into the part of the meeting, and but you do that relaxed. But that relaxed me also.
Well, it's trust me. It may seem like I'm relaxed, but I'm shaking in my boots.
Well, you don't show it, but it's a good experience. I had to talk Bruce Houpt into accepting it. It took me 3 phone calls. He just said, no. And I finally convinced him of it. And I said, but you'll thank me in 2 years. It's one of your best experiences that you'll have.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Balor, thank you so much for your time.
No, you bet, Randy.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.